Hey, everybody. As all of you know, my good friend Robert Kiyosaki, he's on with us today, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, changed many, 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 many people's lives. We just spent the weekend together in Dallas listening to Ron Paul and a whole bunch of really smart people on liberty and freedom. And we study every single week with the advisors on a Zoom call. And Robert, it's always a blast to have you on, and I can't wait to chat with you.
Yeah, I mean, we chatted all the way to Dallas in the jet and all the way back in the jet, and you never even told me I was doing the show with you.
Well, you got to save some things for later.
Yeah. Anyway, it's always fun. Always fun.
Yeah. For a lot of you guys that don't know, Robert and Kim and I, we've been friends for a long, long time. They've invested in a lot of property with us. We have a lot of history. I've been on the road with Robert and Kim and the advisors, and we've been all over the world and written all kinds of books and had all kinds of fun and educated. Actually, Robert, you are the one who taught me that I am a teacher.
Yeah, it's important. You have an important job because most teachers have no idea what they're talking about. That's why they're school teachers.
Yeah.
It's nice to have a teacher that knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, I know. Well, obviously we all learn together. That's the cool part. I mean, imagine. I mean, we were at dinner Saturday night, and people were just going crazy because it was obviously Robert. They had Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but then they look over and they see George, and then they look over and they see me, and they're like, "What the heck? Like, what the three are you guys doing here?" And they all like our waitress, the manager, the head of the bar, and this is at Del Frisco's in downtown Dallas, and they all recognize and they were all watching us. It's very cool. Everybody's trying to figure stuff out, right?
Yeah, the really neat thing about that dinner at Del Frisco's is they're not the guys that were at the seminar we're at. I mean, the seminars we attend are expensive. We got to admit that. So only the most hardcore people come to them. But to know that our YouTube videos are reaching the masses, that's really satisfying. It makes my heart happy. And I think even though this COVID thing shuts us down and all this stuff, it's still worth it. And as you know, we've been studying the Federal Reserve Bank, the macroeconomic systems, the shadow banking systems. And we can just do that going onto our little iPhones. We just dial into this little thing here. And we bring up fantastic teachers like Lacey Hunt, Jim Rickards, and what's his name?
Jeff Snyder.
Jeff Snyder. I mean, those boys are brilliant. And in real life, if not for Zoom or Twitter or Facebook, all this stuff, we'd have no access to it.
Yeah. And
that's the best part about this whole thing.
That is the best part. And by the way, guys, like those are the last three videos we studied. So we study a video a week. And the first one was Lacey Hunt. The second one was Jim Rickards. The last one was Jeff Snyder. And then, of course, we got to spend the weekend with George Gammon. So I got to tell you, I'm a complete basket case. I have no idea, like, whether we're going through inflation, deflation, stagflation, hyperinflation. They're so smart, and they have all these different viewpoints. So what do you think?
Well, what I thought was fantastic because Lacey Hunt and then Jim Rickards, who was LTCM, Long-Term Capital Management, one of the smartest guys I've ever met. They're going to write a book together. And then Jeff Snyder. And the thing that is shocking is that all of them say the same thing, is the Fed has no power. The Fed's a joke. And that's why Ron Paul, Congressman Ron Paul was with us in Texas. And he says the same thing, and the Fed. But everybody thinks the Federal Reserve Bank is omnipotent, the most powerful bankers in the world. And what these guys are saying, they have no power because the real banking system is the shadow banking system. It's the banking system we cannot see. And so when the Fed says, "Oh, we're going to talk about expectations," they say we're printing money. So the Fed says we're printing quantitative easing, and everybody goes, "Oh, that means there's going to be inflation. Oh, there's going to be inflation. Oh, there's going to be inflation." But what Lacey Hunt, Jim Rickards, and Jeff Snyder are saying, no, it's deflation. Right? I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. In fact, what they said was that if you take a look at the trend line for inflation, we're actually below the trend line.
Right. And what Lacey Hunt started the whole thing, I think he was part of the Fed. He says what the Fed depends upon is GDP, gross domestic product, equals M2 times V. And M2 is money supply. So every time the Fed chairman, this guy Powell, gets up there and says, oh, we're issuing, we're going to print money, they don't print money. But everybody thinks when the Fed says we're printing money or quantitative easing, they think it's M2. And what Jeff Snyder and everybody else is saying, George and everybody's saying, the Fed doesn't print money. The Fed prints bank reserves. And the difference is we cannot spend bank reserves. It's not money. But everybody says, oh my God, there's going to be inflation because the Fed's printing money, but they're not printing money. They're printing bank reserves.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, one of the things that Snyder called them camel's humps. Remember, he said the stimulus payments, if you want to take a look at inflation, take a look at when they dropped all that money on the people, you see a inflationary hump, and then an inflationary hump based on the amount of money that they stimulated in the economy.
I think the most important thing is that the Fed is a joke. I mean, exactly and he was on stage with us in Texas a couple of days ago, and he said the Fed's a joke. And everybody says, oh, don't fight the Fed. What else do they say? Fed has forward guidance. And the Fed is the Wizard of Oz. He's got no power.
Right.
And it's kind of hard for the average person to understand that. But that's the beauty of YouTube and all the stuff we listen to and going to those conferences. And so the conference was for a lot of rich people. But then to go to Del Frisco's and have the wait staff all excited because we're there. So that's the power of YouTube.
Yeah.
They have access to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's trying to learn together.
So since the Fed only prints for the bank reserves, is that why you're having real estate kind of skyrocket right now because the bank's lending more?
Well, it's what they manage expectations. So when the Fed gets up there and says, we're going to do QE, the uneducated, the unwashed, the filthy, the people who don't watch YouTube say, oh, that means there's going to be inflation. QE, quantitative easing, means they're printing money. But they're not printing money, they're printing bank reserves, and you cannot spend a bank reserve. All it is a ledger entry between I owe you, Daniil, $10, and you say, I owe you $10. But no, there's no money there. So it's a complete sham. And that's what the power of YouTube is. And guys like Jeff Snyder, Lacey Hunt, and Jim Rickards, and the staff working on us, they can now get to some of the best teachers in the world for free.
Yeah, and we'll put those links up on the podcast here, so people can see them. But those are the last 3 videos that we studied, and I think it's important because I also fell into that camp, Robert. I thought, oh, the Fed prints money, and that's but all 4 of those folks, Gammon, Snyder, Rickards, and Hunt, all say that's not how it works.
No. And they say we're in deflation, not inflation. But everybody's buying houses, Daniil, because they think prices are going up. Because it's called the Fed manages expectancy, not reality. So they send out, when I watch CNBC, all those goofballs out there say, oh, the Fed issued forward guidance. It's a sham. They want to trick you. And that's what guys like Lacey Hunt, Jeff Snyder, and Jim Rickards are saying. It's bullshit. And then they say, well, don't fight the Fed. And that's why it was so profound in Texas. And then studying what we study at Rich Dad is these 3 guys who most people would never even listen to. They're the smartest guys I've ever met. So it's the Fed is the Wizard of Oz. There's nothing there.
So if everyone thinks there's inflation, but there's actually deflation going on, or they're afraid of deflation happening, what does deflation look like for those that haven't experienced it?
Well, let me explain it, because this is what Jeff Snyder made really clear. It goes to the monetary system, the banking system. There's a thing called the shadow banking system. And the shadow banking system is like 100 times bigger than the Fed. And what all three guys, Lacey Hunt, Jim Rickards, and Jeff Snyder, are saying, the shadow banking system is crashing. So the Fed is out there saying, oh, we're issuing forward guidance saying, we'll print QE or whatever they do. So everybody thinks price is going up. But the reality of the three guys are saying, we're going into a depression. It's crashing. Because the biggest money system is a shadow banking system. We cannot see it. It's crashing as we speak.
Yeah, and there's a lot of U.S. dollars. And basically, we trade in U.S. dollars. So in talking to George would say, there's a tremendous amount of U.S. dollars outside of the U.S.
Correct. That's
right?
a shadow bank.
That's the shadow bank. So people don't know. I mean, you think about if we buy something from China, and we are the world's largest consumer, that we pay them in U.S. dollars. They're taking U.S. dollars. And that's what these guys are talking about. You got to pay attention to the whole picture, right?
Yeah. It's the Fed. The Fed has no power. The Fed is the Wizard of Oz. And if you think of it that way, I wrote an article for a friend at Jet Set, and I wrote about the Fed being the Wizard of Oz. I caught hell for that one too. But anyway, I was just kind of guessing, I was just kind of guessing. I think like Janet Yellen looks like Uncle Festus, or, they're all a bunch of cartoons. I mean, what was his name? Who was the Fed chairman? Greenspan. Oh, I'm going to tweak the interest rates at 0.5%. Everybody gets all excited, oh, he raised by 0.5%, he lowered by 0.5%. And all these idiots jump up and down like a bunch of clowns. And it got no power. The biggest monetary system is the shadow banking system, and it's going broke.
Yeah. And so what the Fed is doing is they're tapering off buying the bonds, and they're talking about potentially increasing rates, right?
Yeah, they say we're tapering, so everybody thinks, oh, that means the economy is getting strong. Oh, and that means they're going to increase rates. But the Fed has no power. The Fed is the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. Yellen came out today that says that because right now inflation's at 5.4 or 5.3. She got out this morning and said that she thinks that it's going to be pretty inflationary through mid 2022.
Transitory through mid 2022.
Transitory is now a year.
That's the word.
They're going to change the definition of transitory.
Yeah.
But what it really means is, if you notice, the reason the shelves are empty is because the Fed or Yellen has been paying people to stay at home. So the truck drivers aren't driving, and they're not unloading the trucks. The shelves are empty, and everybody goes, oh my God, there's a shortage. I think it's all manufactured. Why would they pay people not to work? Why would there be 9 million ships sitting offshore? Nobody's unloading them. The shelves are empty. And everybody thinks there's inflation. It's supply and demand.
I know, but gas is at all-time highs. Rents are at all-time highs, and home prices are at all-time highs right now, and unemployment's at an all-time high. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, and then Biden cuts out the Keystone Pipeline, and then he wants to buy oil. So Russia and Saudi Arabia are in trouble now, because when they abandoned Afghanistan, that broke the agreement with the petrodollar with with Saudi Arabia and America. See, America promised Saudi Arabia we'd protect them. But when they dumped Afghanistan, the Saudis said, oh my God, we can't trust America. So this is all happening in the last few weeks. And so European shadow, the euro dollar, the shadow banking system is collapsing. And so so Powell gets up, the Fed chairman gets up and he says, oh, we're going to start to end taper. And that means we might start interest rates. They're trying to get people to spend money.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's essentially what Gammon and Snyder and Rickards and Hunt said, is that what they're doing is they're using these almost marketing tactics to get people to keep consuming.
Yeah, if what they say is low interest rates are not good, it means the economy is collapsing. And if interests were really high, that would be good for another reason. Everything is opposite of what we think it is. And that's what the power of those YouTube videos we studied, Lacey Hunt, Jim Rickards, and Jeff Snyder.
Yeah, and we were talking about this morning. This is right now who's getting crushed is fixed income. People like my mom on Social Security. She makes $1,450 a month, and that's what she's going to make in 5 years. By the way, and stuff's going to go up. Obviously, going to take care of her, but anybody on that, like some of those workers that we met, it's funny. I was reading something today, Robert. The guy said, if I give you a 4% raise, are you going to be happy or angry? Right? And but that's still not enough.
No, inflation is a tax. That's what it is. And the trouble is, there really isn't inflation, it's really deflation. And the trouble is, what's deflating is a shadow banking system. And the Fed doesn't have the power to stop it. So that's why the odds are going into a depression. But also when they dumped all the weapons in Afghanistan, it pissed off the Saudis and Israel. They don't trust America today. So that's crushing the economy of Europe.
So when if the shadow banking system collapses, how will that affect our monetary system here?
That's a multi-million-dollar question.
Good one though.
Because that's why we go. Kenny and I go to those things, and we learn more as much as anybody else. Because you hear all these different people saying different points of view. That's a good thing about YouTube too. Somebody says it's going this way, some people say it's going that way. So the best thing to do is, like they say, your mind should be like a parachute. It works best when it's open. So I sit there listening to people and go, well, I may not agree with you, but I will listen to you.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you think is going to happen with all these workers? Where it just seems to be getting worse. Like people are now just saying, and they're also making a little bit of money with crypto, and some if they own any real estate. I was talking to as we were talking to George on the way back from Dallas. He said, yeah, they're buying these big expensive cars. They're feeling rich, but they don't have any monthly income.
Well, there's crypto billionaires, right? Or Bitcoin billionaires. They've never had a job. I mean, I kind of envy them. They're driving McLarens and all this stuff. I wish I was there. But I kind of think I like our approach, Kenny and Danielle, is a little hard work and experience goes a long way. But you get lucky. It's like a kid who was born lucky. They don't know how to recover if they lose it. Or like most sports athletes are broke 5 years after making millions. So that could be the crypto guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if it's not sustainable, yep, that's exactly right. I think there's unfortunately a pretty good disincentive for people to go back to work.
I don't know, man, because I like my work. I mean, you and I don't have to work. I love work, and I love study. I love hanging out with all you guys. We had a blast in Texas. It's just fun. But to get paid and not work, it doesn't doesn't go with me. I don't like it. I'd rather not get paid.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know that there's article after article. I read one this morning that said, back in the day, you used to have to pay to lure an executive, let's say, to a company. Now you have to do it to for anybody.
Yeah.
You basically have to pay incentives.
I think that, Neil, the most fun we had though was, here's this whole, there's probably 300 people, a lot of them doctors and all this stuff. And, doctors, this is the trouble with a doctor, if you understand tax law. If a doctor earns $1 million, they net 400,000. In other words, they pay 60% in taxes. So the screw job is, my son's a doctor, my daughter's a doctor, she makes $1 million a year, but his take home is 60% less. So Kenny and I up there, and then I like to be the stand-up comedian. So Kenny and I get up there, and I said, "Hey, Kenny, how much money did you borrow last week?" And what did you say?
Like 300 million.
And the room went silent, Daniil.
Well, the best was, one of the tax havens right now is Puerto Rico. You can go there and basically you're doing business there. It's a 4% tax. So Robert and I are eating breakfast with this couple, and they're like, "Yeah, we're flying tomorrow to Puerto Rico." I go, "Wow. How long do you have to be there?" 183 days. They have to move to Puerto Rico legally to be able to do that. And so we're scratching our heads going, well, if you buy enough real estate, you have depreciation. You won't need to move to Puerto Rico. And then Robert, being the smart ass that he is, says, "Yeah, well, I just bought a jet, and I got to write the whole thing off this year against any capital gains that I had," which is true. And so there are ways to mitigate tax legally.
Yeah.
If you apply the tax code, but their limited view was move to Puerto Rico.
Yeah. So what they're doing is they're moving to Puerto Rico. They have to stay 183 days. And apparently the lockdown is draconian. It's very fascist. But I said, why don't you just buy some real estate? But this is the key, Daniil. The reason they cannot buy enough real estate is they don't have Kenny's skills. To buy $300 million in real estate, the easy part is the borrowing the money. The hard part is managing the property. Right, Kenny?
Yeah, without a doubt.
And buying correctly.
As you know. Daniil owns real estate, so.
Yeah, that's the hardest part is the management. The borrowing is easy. The finding is easy. So I'll just tell the story when Kim and I were, doing our best to get up to have enough real estate, millions of dollars of real estate. So we don't have to pay taxes. The biggest problem was management. And then when I met Kenny about 25 years ago, he says his property manager, man, Kim and I were all over him like a cheap suit. You do property management, like that. And then so everybody knows this. I mean, Kenny's a great guy. And then he looked at our property and says, "I can't help you." I said, "What do you mean? You manage property." "Yes, but your properties are too small."
That's right. Yeah, Robert and Kim had to up their game.
And so that's, Kenny makes it sound easy. Yeah, I just borrow 300 million. But you cannot borrow 300 million if you can't manage it. And if you can manage 300 million, you pay no taxes. But so after we're through talking, because I was laughing my ass off, is the room was filled with doctors who, like I said, they make $1 million. They pay 600,000 in taxes. So when Kenny got up there, he says, "I borrowed 300 million. All these doctors swarmed him, but they cannot borrow 300 million because they cannot do what Kenny does, which is manage properties. That's the key.
Yeah, their biggest issue, and so that's why these tax policies, they are going to be what they are. But I said to everybody, I said the tax code has always been, and it will be, a guide to teach you what you can do legally.
Yes,
that's essentially what it is.
Yes,
people don't look at it that way, but it's really a book that says, okay, here's what you can do. So if you work within the rules that they tell you, and that's the piece they don't. What they do is they take their tax returns to somebody and then just does their books, but there's no tax planning.
Right. And I was sitting there. I called Tom Wheelwright this morning. Tax-free wealth, And I said, Tom, is it true these doctors make $1 million a year and pay 600,000 in taxes? He says, he sees it every day. They go to school, they become doctors, they have massive student loan debt, they make millions of dollars and give it to the government.
Yeah, and they don't know what to ask, and they have oftentimes they have the wrong advisors on their team. They don't realize that there's, if they buy like their own building, just that simple. Take that money, put together a group of doctors, and buy their own building, and have them rent back from themselves. They'll get a massive depreciation deduction just from that one move.
It helps, That's what Dr. Tom Burns does. Why doctors don't get rich. But again, if I could, I just want to say it again because it's so important. The reason I'm standing on stage with Kenny and I said, how much money did you borrow last week? And Kenny, without skipping a beat, says 300 million. Daniil, the room went silent. But they don't realize the only reason I can't borrow that much, but Kenny can borrow it because of property management.
Yeah.
Whole
Yeah.
company. How many employees do you have, Kenny?
250.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Yeah, as you know, and a track record, and it's paired up with collateral and a down payment and all those other things, which Robert didn't ask that question, but and so we showed them basically our model, which was buy something, increase the value, put new debt on it, pull the cash out, and it blew their minds. So it's like you and I talk about this all the time. But surprising that these very, very smart, very, very wealthy doctors from all over the country never had heard that.
No, and Daniil, Kenny was swamped. They don't talk to me because I don't know shit anyway.
I'm sure I've seen that before.
Yeah, and all I do, we told this room about 300 people. I make money. Let's say I make $1 million. I'm in trouble. Because if I don't place that money with debt and step it up to an asset, so I make $1 million, I got to call Kenny. I said, I need $4 million in debt. It's completely opposite what people think. I want the debt, so Kenny's going to take the 4 million, marry it to my 1 million, and the asset becomes 5 million. And when you have a $5 million asset, then you can depreciate it, appreciate it, and amortize it. Those are accounting terms. That's why I pay no taxes. But Kenny and I are up on stage doing our best to explain to people, Kenny and I are partners, not because I'm in real estate, but because Kenny can borrow money and he can manage the property. And if you can't do that, move to Puerto Rico. I thought that was so funny.
That was the part that was most interesting. I mean, these are really, really smart people, and some of them are creating residency in Puerto Rico to try to mitigate tax. It is, as everyone knows, it's the largest expense of your life by a long shot, tax. But people don't see it that way because they don't really, it kind of happens, silently, behind the scenes, right?
See if you can picture this. Okay, a doctor makes $1 million. He's an A student, and he nets 400,000. Kenny and I are C students. We make $1 million, but we take home 1.1 tax free.
Year over year over year.
We're accelerating so fast over those doctors. That's why Kenny's license plate says what? C. What's your license plate say?
C student.
Huh?
Well, I have one that says infinite, and the other says C student.
And mine says C plus.
Yeah, but that it's interesting as everybody works their butts off, and then they start making all this cash. Even when you sell something like a company, the whole issue is how do I pay? I mean, even this morning, that was if I sell this, how do I mitigate tax? Tax is it's something that you can learn. It's something that you can do. and it's actually not that complicated if you just scratch the surface a little bit, right?
Yeah, that's why Tom asked Tom Wheelwright to write his book, Tax-Free Wealth, because America was founded in 1773 as a tax-free nation. It was the Boston Tea Party. And now the New York Times wants us to believe it's a 1619 project or whatever it is. But America is really a tax-free nation. That's how it was formed. And it's just gone downhill since then. I just thought it was so interesting that when I said the Fed does not print money, the Fed prints bank reserves. Now, why is that so important? Because what that means is the banks need Kenny to come into the bank with a project, with an asset, like the project in Austin, Texas. And they go, oh, thank you, Kenny, thank you. Because what the average guy doesn't realize is the bank needs, when the Fed gives them those bank reserves, they've got to lend it out. They cannot hold on to the bank reserves. So Kenny walks in, I got a $50 million project. And they say, thank you, Jesus, he showed up. They're going to lend Kenny this money, but it's only until Kenny comes in to borrow the money does money exist.
Right. That's right.
That was a lot of clarity there. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we got approved today on that loan, by the way, on the Austin loan.
Yeah. Kim's jumping for joy because she just got approved too. I don't know what for, but Danielle, this is the funny thing. Dave Ramsey says live debt free.
Yeah.
The rest of us are saying, how much debt can I get?
Yeah, covered debt, right? We want good debt that's covered. You need the income to cover it. You don't just want to borrow, right?
Well, the asset isn't the property. The asset's the tenant.
Correct.
But the tenant's going to put the money into the property for a place to live, and then we get tax breaks. But this is the best part about other analysis. So let's say Kenny and I buy a property for $1 million. And he fixes it up, he increases the rent, and the property is now $5 million. And most people would sell the property to get the $4 million out. And what happens if we sell the property to get the $4 million out, Kenny?
Yeah, well then we have tax.
You have capital gains.
Yeah, we have a capital gain tax and we have a depreciation recapture tax.
Yeah. The punishment.
So yeah, and we have the problem of having the cash again
Yeah.
in an inflationary economy to try to figure out what are we going to reinvest in again.
So Danielle, when Kenny was talking to Kim and I, because Kim was the one doing the property management, it's a pain in the ass. It really is. You get a phone call, you say, hey, somebody's walking out with your refrigerator. Call the cops and all that stuff. But anyway, so let's say a property at $1 million, Kenny improves the property, is now worth $5 million. How do you get the $4 million out, Kenny?
Yeah, well then you take obviously the property back to the bank, maybe that bank or even another bank, and the bank looks at the collateral and they lend against it. So the bank lends against the collateral that's now worth $5 million. So maybe you get $3 million at that point, or $4 million at that point in debt, more debt.
Yeah. So let's say Kenny borrows out the $3 million in collateral from the property. The $3 million is what?
Tax free. Yep. Yeah. I mean,
God bless America.
You don't pay tax on debt, right, as you know. So, and that's the model, and that's why we get these questions, Robert. People are like, well, my property's worth a lot more. I'm going to sell, right? We had that one today. I'm like, don't sell. Put more debt on that you can manage, especially if you're, and then go out and do that again. And but what they do is they sell, then they put that money in the bank or give it to a financial planner or or wealth manager. Or in the bank, even worse, and it sits there until they can find something else.
Yeah. The reason that Kenny's system works is every time we borrow money, we don't pay taxes.
I know. Isn't that interesting that the IRS and the
it's so funny.
It's
funny. I can't stand it sometimes, but I can't explain it to a person. So when Kenny stood up on stage in Texas a couple of days ago, I just asked him that one question. Kenny, how much did you borrow last week? He goes, oh, 300 million. Daniil, it sucked air out of the room.
I'm sure.
Right. And, I noticed Ron Paul stayed for the whole thing.
Yeah.
He was
Ron Paul
listening.
came up to me. He
Yeah.
said, I didn't know you were that smart. I said, yeah, I watch YouTube.
Yeah, he's one smart boy. I'll tell you
Oh,
what,
boy.
he's been through the ringer. Ran for president 3 times, and and has always stood for liberty and truth. And I really enjoyed his talk.
Yeah, I just relay what he said because he was on a Rich Dad radio show. He said, the Constitution is no good if our leaders are liars.
Yep.
He says before they pledge to defend the Constitution, they should put the hand on the Bible and restate the 10 Commandments. He says because the Constitution is only as good as our leaders, and that's like Neil Howe was saying with the fourth turning. The fourth turning is marked by bad leadership, and I don't think any worse than it is today. I've never seen such bad leadership. They lie, cheat, and steal. You know, the Fed guys were caught for insider trading.
So this is the game we're playing right now. So where do you think we're heading with the real estate market and the debt market and all that?
Well, that's why I give my money to you. You know, it's because I just want to say to people, to borrow 300 million, you've got to be absolutely spot on with the management. And as you know, management is a key for real estate, for businesses, for the government, everything. And if a person cannot manage, we're screwed. So as long as we have our management skills in, we'll do well. Like I don't really care. You know, as I said in front of the room, I said, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, because I have a Learjet and my money is stashed offshore.
All true, by the way. Yeah.
And the second passport, Kenny, the second passport's next.
Yeah, I know. We were talking about that, The so what do you think is going to happen with the currency, the dollar, coming, with all the shadow banking and all that? Do you have any predictions?
Kenny, that's where we hang out with Ganman, I mean, I rode home with him after we left the airport. That guy is one smart dude. George is unbelievable. So he's explained to me why the dollar was safe, and he told me about I'm going, so I'll just call him, just like I call you.
I know we used to have him
Call
on
him up.
for that question.
Why figure it out? I'm just going to call Kenny. I called George.
Yeah.
And it's such a good time to be alive. Really, as bad as it is, it's the most exciting time I've ever seen.
I agree. There's so much opportunity right now.
Well, there will be.
Yeah, I think there is right now.
There is. Daniil,
Things
I've been investing like a wild man in startups. There's so much stuff coming down the pike. So there's more opportunity as technology changes. So there's a lot of good stuff happening.
Yeah, I think a lot of the sacred cows are going to be taken down. I mean, you look at first Sears and Kmart, then Walmart, and now Amazon. Even Bezos said, he goes, there will be a day that Amazon, is not at the top. And I just think that there's always opportunities at every juncture.
Yeah. I just think we should relay this is when Lacey Hunt was one of the guys with the Dallas Fed, I think. And he was talking GDP equals M2 times V, gross domestic product equals money supply, M2 times velocity of money. But what he was really accurate saying, because this affects Kenny and I, when they measure GDP, they don't measure broken glass. And what broken glass is, Daniil, when you walk around the shopping centers, a lot of places are empty. That's broken glass. That means, so they don't measure the losses. They measure the gains in GDP, but they don't measure the number of shops that are closed. So it's not an accurate number. So ever since Lacey Hunt said that, I went to our friend's place, I'll mention his name, And he was trying to sell me the whole top floor of this building. And I walked into that, and I turned it down because it's office space. I don't understand office. I understand apartment houses. I don't understand office space. So I went into this office building I was supposed to buy. It was 70% empty. That's broken glass. And that means somebody is not receiving the monthly payment. Right, Kenny?
Yeah, he said another way. He wants you to step into the falling knife.
And so I was at a shopping center not too far on Scottsdale Road. And there's only a couple of shops left. That's broken glass.
And,
But
and
they
that,
still-
that right, and that doesn't show up right now in GDP,
No,
but it will.
that's why it's really an exciting time. But what's going to happen? There's going to be a lot of creativity. I don't know. I mean, who goes shopping when you can go online? Do you know?
Yep. Yeah. And so that's the broken glass that is going to show up soon, because those buildings have real mortgages and they have real people that put up real equity and they have real jobs associated with it. And all those things are going to make their way through the system.
And a lot of those big office buildings, reason we don't hear about it is because REITs, Real Estate Investment Trusts, own them. Big Kennys, big ones, public companies. The trouble is, mom and pop, the baby boomers, invest in REITs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do a lot of 401ks, right?
Pensions,
Got
401ks.
it,
Yeah.
got it.
REITs are real estate investment trusts. They're basically stocks.
So when Lacey Hunt says there's broken glass, it means a lot of the baby boomers are toast because they drank the Kool-Aid and invested in REITs.
So George went to was it Freedom Fest in New Orleans? The Gold.
The New Orleans Investment Conference.
The New Orleans Investment Conference. He said that. Well, first of all, they just had that hurricane, so he said 70 to 80% of the buildings and houses in the area had blue tarps on the roofs, and a big chunk of businesses were boarded up, and they required, of course, vaccines and masks and all that. And so he basically said he's not going back. And it's a city right now that's obviously imploding.
It's dying.
Yeah, the city. That's just New Orleans. And so all that stuff has debt and equity and jobs and all that kind of stuff. And as tourism and all that stuff starts to not go there anymore, or Chicago or New York or Seattle or Portland, that's what's starting to show up now.
That's the broken glass.
Yeah.
I call it vacancy. And then so that's why Kenny can borrow 300 million because he can
Right.
manage the property.
And so when Robert looked at that office building, again, when I said don't catch a falling knife, that property is at the beginning, the knife is beginning to fall. And you don't want to catch it while it's falling. You want the property to be all the way vacant or almost all the way vacant, back to the bank. You want it to you want to buy the property from the bank after everything's cleaned up.
And that's what all three guys are saying: Lacey Hunt, Jim Rickards, and Rich Schneider. The collateral is bad.
Yes.
The security is bad.
That was one of the opinions from video to video was that all this money has to be backed by collateral of something. Somebody has to pay it. Somebody has to be able to pay, right?
Yeah. So that office building that's right by my house is empty. That's collateral. And there's money in it.
Right. So somebody borrowed against that, and if they can't pay it, now it's bank owned.
And so that's what, when we talk about the Fed doesn't lend money, it lends bank credits. And the Fed needs, or the banks need people like Kenny to come in there and borrow money. And what they borrowed money on was collateral. They said, oh, here's this office building. And the bank would say, oh, what a wonderful idea. We'll lend you the money on it. but now the building's empty.
So then
That's
the other
bad.
interesting part about that is you can't get a loan if a building's empty.
Very good point.
I've had to buy on the other end of that, where you go into a bank and they own the real estate, or REO, or real estate owned, they call it in their REO department. And the bank's like, they want to get rid of what's called a toxic loan or a toxic asset, but they can't put debt on it because there's no tenants.
Yeah, the tenant is the asset. So that's why Kenny's always said, you want to invest in properties where there's jobs. And look at what happened to New York City. Was Amazon was going to move into New York City, but they offered Amazon huge tax breaks. And AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, that's not fair. So they chased Amazon out of New York
Yeah,
City.
it would have been their headquarters.
Oh, wow.
Amazon out of New York. New York would be okay today because Amazon survived.
It certainly would have been a lot better off, that's for sure.
Yeah. And when Amazon is there, a lot of small businesses thrive and all that stuff. So that's why it's been one big disaster after disaster after disaster. And I don't think we've seen the worst yet.
Right. I would agree. Again, the knife is still falling. In some areas, it's still fine. But in areas like Chicago, New Orleans, Portland, downtown Seattle, people are telling me, and San Francisco, don't go there. Right?
Mhm,
Aren't you hearing
definitely.
that?
Yeah, it's dicey.
Yeah. So you got to wait for that to make its way to where it goes. But unfortunately, that money is invested through people's pensions, through their insurance policies, through their 401ks, and that's where the money originates.
So let me give you the good news, no matter how bad the news is. Okay. Like I said, when we stood up in Texas, I said, how much money did you borrow last week? And Kenneth says $300 million. That's always there. The banks have to lend money. So when people say, well, you should save cash, why would you save cash when you can borrow it? So, it's almost like the real estate owned. Remember those days? In 2008 and all that property was available, but the bank owned it. REO is what they're called, real estate owned. You could go to the bank and they said, look, you got this office building, nobody wants it, sell it to me. And the bank would actually loan you the money to buy the property. So what I was saying on stage with Kenny yesterday or 2 days ago in Dallas, is how much money did you borrow? The secret to life is how much money can you borrow? And how well can you manage that debt? And so that's why I don't worry, because I know Ken McElroy.
But also, when you go get that bank-owned property, what do they ask? Who's your team? How are you going to manage it? And how are you going to fix it? Because that's how they make money. So it's almost like handing, a baton in a race. Like they hand you the baton and they hope, that you could take it up the value, and then they can get it off their books. And that's essentially how the real money is made. Is you got to wait, though. You don't want to catch that falling knife. You want it to actually be at the bank. You want to go to the bank. You want to negotiate with the bank, and that's where you get the heaviest discounts on real estate, and then you fix it.
So Danielle, you're really young, but I remember so many of these disasters, and finally I realized disasters were the best time to get rich. So the answer is I don't really care, because I know Ken McElroy. He can borrow money, and he can fix the property. We can change the usage. And that's what makes you rich. The problem is those doctors who came up to talk to Kenny after we got off stage, they don't have the skill set to do what he does.
Right.
It's interesting,
Yeah. They want to invest, but they actually don't know why.
But they don't have the skill set to manage if you're going to borrow that much money, you've got to have a team that can manage that much money. So it's a very exciting time. That's why I'm happy you guys invited me on your show. because this is the best time, but you better know who you know. I mean, I don't care if a doctor is the best doctor in the world. Like I said, he's the guy who's going to make $1 million next year, and he's going to give 600,000 of it to the government. And we can borrow $1 million, and it's all tax-free.
And that is the name of the game. So it is a great time to get educated, sit back and watch, pour yourself into YouTube, try to get as many answers as you can and be the right place at the right time. And you don't need the cash. You need the knowledge and the team and be able to manage this.
And that's why your 3 books are like Bibles. The ABCs, Property Management, and Advanced. Advances are the finance strategies. The property management is the key.
Yep.
And then the ABCs are the basics. So you invest in that, you'll make a lot more money than going back to college.
Definitely.
Right. Yeah. So we're all waiting for a crash. That's what all my guys that made money in the past, they're like, when do you think the crash? The number one question. When's this thing going to crash?
I think it's already here.
Could be.
That's why they're dumping treasuries. That's why interest rates are so low. They need cash. I mean? They don't sell T-bills is for cash. They need the dollars.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. That's for sure. But you should not be too concerned. You just got to be aware.
Yes. And Danielle, I mean, Kenny is the boy. I am not blowing smoke. I can't do what Kenny does. I can only ride his tail right now. So it's really the best time because, anyway, it's really a great time. Lack of leadership.
I think so too. Even though the media will tell you everything's so bad, and it is in a lot of respects, but there's a lot of really good things happening, and there's a lot of positions you can put yourself into right now and be on the positive side of this. Well, we'll have to come back on this one. And, we'll predate it and see where this goes.
It's such an exciting time. It's such an exciting time.
It kind of is honestly to watch, especially if you have passive income like we do. I mean, it is scary. It's horrible. People are getting hurt and all that, but there is a way out of this, and there are things that you can do today to make sure that you're going to be fine.
Yeah, and I would get Kenny's 3 books because the key to it is debt and taxes. If you can manage debt and you don't pay taxes, you're way ahead, way down the road. So because as long as you can borrow money, the banks are happy to give it to you. But you've got to have the collateral. Right, Kenny?
For sure. All right, Robert. Well, thanks again. Awesome hanging the weekend with you. And I can't wait to watch the new video tomorrow and be ready for our Thursday talk again.
Yeah. So thank you, Danielle. It was really a fun trip. I mean, it was fun.
I know.
I wouldn't have got injured.
I could have been there. Ken would have got injured if I was there.
That's for sure. She would have kept me out of trouble.
Just remember my saying, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, because I have my own Learjet.
That's right.
I can get out of here quickly.
I know. Well, I'm glad you have that. Okay, Robert.
Thanks,
Good
man.
chatting with you. See you, buddy.
See you later.
Talk to you soon.